Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is an industry leader and a diehard Kansas City Chiefs fan who has spent years coaching loan officers, whether it's career transitions or business growth. She believes the right environment unlocks potential faster than any strategy or system. And today, she's here to share what separates high performers from everyone else. Susie Cheatham, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you so much. Happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have you here and have this conversation because this is going to be a little bit different than some of the conversations we've had. A lot of times on the Lowdown, we have producers and you've done your share of production. Don't get me wrong. And we'll go into that. But today we're going to focus a lot on like leadership and things of that nature. So before we start diving into it, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little background on you and just kind of how you got started and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. So I started as an intern in college. I just wanted a paycheck and some college credit in the underwriting department at a regional mortgage company. And it was awful. I hated every bit of it. I thought it was dysfunctional and terrible. I just wanted to graduate and go to law school and get married. And that was really it. So fast forward to the month before I was going to graduate, the president calls me in, says, "How do you like the underwriting department?" And I gave the politically correct, "Oh, it's great. Thank you for this opportunity. I learned a lot. It's good." And he said, "I did not peg you as a girl that was just going to give me lip service." And he said, I really need to know. What do you think? I said, "It was awful. I never want to do this. I can't wait to graduate and go to law school." And he said, "I would love to put you in a branch to process." So I accepted and processed for a little bit until the point where he brought me in and said, "I think you would make a great loan officer." And this was about 6 months after I graduated. 7 months after I graduated, 6 months after I got married. And I told him, I can't go 100% commission. I'm pregnant. We just found out. And he said, I still want to go to law school. And he said, "Well, lawyers can't raise families the way you're going to want to raise a family. I know that, number one. Number two, how much do they make?" And I said, $10, because this was, early 2000s, starting out. And he said, "I'll give you $50,000 salary. If you make more, you keep it. If you don't owe me a thing." And so my first year, I made $54,000. And in that first year, a top producer showed me his paycheck, and he made $25,000 that month. And I was like, "Wait, what? Really? I see you do this every single day, and that's what you can make." And so we had our son, and I realized that there was no way I wanted to put in the hours that a new attorney put in. And I loved originating. And so it's just been all uphill since that time. It was great.
And so what was your journey in production like, and how did that go? You get started. First of all, I just want to call something out because I love this about folks that represent sort of the top of our industry. It seems like a common trend that they get started in a high volume environment. When you get an opportunity, for anyone listening to this that's trying to figure out how to move forward, get in the right rooms. I cannot stress that enough. There's a lot of different rooms you can be in this industry, branches that you can be a part of. But when you get into a high volume environment where there's a lot of things going on, you can see the kind of work ethic that it takes and get around the people that are doing the work. I find that really sets you up for a brighter future. So even if that means a step back or, a pause on your own personal production to be an assistant or something to that degree, I would just say consider it. I don't know your thoughts on that, Susie. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's just something that resonates with me because it comes up over and over again as like a common theme on this.
It's excellent advice. And, I talk a lot about this in my LinkedIn, is that the environment in which you place yourself to grow will have more impact than the strategies and the skills and the products and all of those, the tech, everything. It's where you plant yourself and who you position yourself to be around that will help propel you to where you want to be, period.
Yeah, absolutely. In the words of, I think it was Benjamin Hardy from Who Not How, get in the room, like around the people that represent your future self, the person you want to be in the future, not your past. And I think that's just such important advice. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your journey here. So now you've seen the $25,000 check in a month, and you're like, I'm all in on production.
So I did go all in on production, and I had really good success. I was doing the type of loans that no one else really wanted to do. So I started by reading the MRI books back in the day and learning all of the guidelines. I wanted to be a walking guideline, robot basically. And so when I would make calls, people would always tell me the worst case scenario and their horror stories of a loan that didn't close or one that was currently blowing up. And I got to where I was really good at saying, I can do that. I know where they went wrong. If you want me to look at it, I'm happy to look at it, and I'm pretty sure we can save this. And after a while, I was that second look lender enough to where I started getting more and more phone calls. And then I learned that it's not always about closing that transaction for that customer. Sometimes it just took a phone call to the LO that was messing it up to say, I'm not calling to steal your referral. I'm calling to help you so that it closes on time. Here's what I would do, and here's some ideas. And so I helped agents close some loans that didn't directly impact my paycheck, but we were doing the right thing for the client. And my business just started, it started growing because people felt like I actually had the customer's best interest at heart. And I did.
I love the open hand kind of abundance mentality there. Guys, there's so much business out there. And to be, an industry player, right? And to call up a counterpart from another company and say, hey, I want to help you win. And has that played a role in leadership for you? I mean, fast forward years later, I'm sure people remember that.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of my biggest referral sources early on in my career was a Bank of America hello, who I had made that phone call to at one time. And she told me, Susie, we have an overlay that we have to have 2 months reserves on an FHA. And that obviously wasn't an FHA requirement, but that was their bank requirement at that time. And so she would send me anything that they couldn't do, which was great. And I would send her doctor loans because that was not we had a doctor loan, but was it better than their product? Absolutely not. So her and I developed a really great relationship. And she told me one day, I wish I had someone with your mentality around me. I feel like, I'm just on this island and I feel unappreciated. I feel like I'm having to reinvent the wheel all the time. I feel like I'm fighting against my own system. And that was kind of an aha moment for me of, I did have support. I did have really great people. I talked about the LO that, he's still number one in Kansas City as a machine and the smartest man I know. And I mean, I moved my desk outside his office at one point just so I could hear how he communicated with customers. And when I started originating, I would go in and say, I know you're busy, but what do I tell this guy? And it was like, if you're a sponge in your environment, you're either going to pick up on some really great things or you're going to learn of what you don't want to do.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I love that because as you're telling me this and just talking, like, I'm thinking of, and this is a weird reference, but I love the play The Death of a Salesman. And there's a scene where Willie Loman goes into, this is a reference that a lot of people may not get, but there's a scene where Willie Loman goes in to talk to his boss, and they have a disagreement and an argument, and Willie says, "A man is not a piece of fruit," right? And that has always resonated with me, and I think about that a lot when I think about the mortgage industry, because we've become an industry where there's a lot of, like, we just want the production, right? There's, and being on an island, as you said, and kind of being put in this situation where it's sink or swim, and the value comes into the production numbers, and we talk about people in terms of how much volume they did, as if that's like their number one quality, and so there's a lot of, like, piece of fruit mentality out there. And something that really jumps out to me in your writing, and if you guys aren't following Susie on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, I don't know if you're on Instagram or anything else, but that's where I see you. You should, because she puts out some really great, like, thought leadership content. And if you want to know what she's like as a leader, she tells you. But has that been like that? Observing that, has that sort of, because you strike me as someone very different than that mentality, has, observing that, or maybe even being a part of that, kind of influenced the way you lead?
Absolutely. I feel like we've got a lot of gaps in how we think we operate as a mortgage industry. We don't think we're transactional. We don't think, that it's an every man for himself kind of industry. But it has really evolved, unfortunately, into that. I I don't believe that those are the best qualities that we should be demonstrating within our industry. And so I really use those things to kind of fuel me and to feel like I want to speak to our industry about how we should be better and how we should be different.
Yeah. So what's the first step in your opinion? Like, where do we how do we start getting back on the right path?
Let's call it out. Let's call it what it is. I mean, I know everyone wants to, play nice in the sandbox, and they want to, um, I don't know, maybe feel like they have to be more politically correct than that. I don't necessarily feel like that's always the best option. I think bad behavior grows when you let things stay in the dark. And so the first thing I want to do is just call it out. And there's going to be people that don't agree with me. That's okay. I'm not for everyone. And I don't want to be for everyone. I'm happy just appealing to my kind of people, or attracting my kind of people that align with my values and I want to grow environments. So really calling it out and putting a spotlight on this needs to change, I think, is number one.
Yeah. I think just in preparing for this episode and talking with you before we started recording and everything, just, you made a comment about, like, building side by side with someone and being in the trenches with them, and really, focusing on the people that will do the work and that will be, aligned with the values. What does that really mean to you? Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for me, you have to build who you are first and what you care about. And I'll give you an example. My top two values are my family first and evolve or die. What that means is, obviously, my family is always going to come first, and I'm going to view everything through the lens that your family should also come first for you. So if that means that we're making decisions, I'm going to take into account that your family is going to be the number one thing that we need to take care of first. And then there's evolve or die. Growth is non-negotiable. I've spent the last few years growing personally, getting a lot of coaching, having a lot of conversations with mentors and people who challenge my thinking. And that means the world to me because I need to show up big for my people, whether that's my family or my team or my customers or my referral partners. I need to show up big for people every day. And I can only do that if I represent a better version of myself each day.
And so growth doesn't necessarily just mean the numbers, right? I mean, when you say growth, does that mean skilling up, learning more about leadership or whatever that is? Like, how do you define growth?
I mean, for me, growth is just evolving on a day to day, whether that's learning a new piece of knowledge, learning a new skill, being coachable, having goals that you're working towards, uh, refining some piece of knowledge or a skill. Growth looks like a lot of different things. It could just be in your response. Do you have an ego driven response versus a mature response? It could be, growth looks like so many things, but our industry puts so much value on growth being volume and numerically driven only. And I believe it's all of the other seeds that you plant that actually then show up in volume.
Sure. Yeah. One way I've seen you grow, and I mentioned it earlier, is just on social media and the content that you're putting out. I mean, what has been the response that you're getting? What are some of the things that you're seeing as a result of being a little more outspoken? And because that's a vulnerable place to be, putting yourself out there and not just posting the generic, I hope everyone will like this kind of stuff, but you're getting very specific. Like you said before, you're not for everyone. So what has that journey been like?
I actually love it because I feel like it's more me. I can say things and deliver messages in a really nice way, but I'm never going to say everything that you want to hear. I'm going to say the things that you need to hear. And so I realized in having adult children, right, who every day their decisions become more and more, grander scale decisions, right? And I'm telling them, oh, you just need to do this. And well, that's not you. And I'm hearing all these things that I'm saying, and I'm thinking, am I modeling that? Am I leading from the front that way? And so that's when I felt like I don't want to appeal to the masses. I don't want my kids to appeal to the masses. I want them to be who they are and surround themselves with the right people. I mean, don't we preach that as parents all the time? The sum of the people that you hang around becomes your future. That is what I decided when I didn't like how our industry was going in the form of management. I want us to be great leaders, not managers. I felt like I'm compelled to tell this story and I am compelled to speak my truth. Even if people don't like it, I'm okay with that. I'm confident enough in myself that I don't really care if people don't like me.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's time that we really start to, whether or not you like what someone has to say, we need to celebrate that they're saying it
Yes.
and willing to put themselves out there in a way, because there's so many others just in the shadows and behind the back or in the dark room saying this or that to a friend or what have you. But to get out there and be bold, that's a big deal. So regardless of if you like it or not, like, let's acknowledge that someone's taking a risk and being willing to say it. And I think that that's important. When you talk about being a leader, like, what are some of your pillars of leadership? What are the things that you really stand on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I stand on people really authentically being themselves, number one. Number two, figuring out what their goals are. You cannot lead someone, you cannot help them achieve what they want to achieve unless they are very crystal clear on who they are and what they want to accomplish, right? And I need people around me that have integrity. They're doing the right thing habitually. They don't have to think about doing the right thing. They're just doing it. And then, as you said earlier, I believe that as an industry, as a team, LOs, that we're all better together. And so we need to lock arms and we need to figure out, how do I get this person, whether it's the weakest on your team, because that's how I should be, is what's the weakest person on my team doing? And how do I help lead them and coach them up? We need to be looking at them and figuring out how we help them at all times. And that's us locking arms and being better together. And then, you've got your other values of where you work. 5-star customer experience, non-negotiable. The other non-negotiable is I don't deal with assholes, period. I won't be one and I'm not going to deal with that. A person that comes in and blows up the culture of an organization can ruin it like that. And I am not going to put my LOs, my success, our owners, or anyone else's futures at risk because of one bad hire, period.
Yeah, the numbers don't work out in that favor, right? In those situations. Well, and then I love that you're focused on growth, and growth means a lot of different things to you, and that you have this experience that you're bringing of building your own business and now investing that and passing it down. I love that about big producers in our industry. There's so many of them that are willing to climb the ladder and then turn around and reach down and pull people up with them. And I want to make that point because if you're listening to this and you're in a situation where you feel like you're struggling to figure out, like, what do I do next? You may be intimidated to make that call, but I promise you this, more often than not, the person that you reach out to is going to be happy to share because they're looking for people to share their secrets with that will do something with them. And the best thing that you can do is honor them by like following their advice and really taking, listening actively and taking action on what it is that they say you should be doing. And so anyway, I just wanted to get that out there because I think it's a really important point to make. As I've talked with so many people like you, Susie, and others that have been on the show, they're performing at such a high level. They're all such great givers of their talents. And sometimes they're genuinely looking for someone to share it with. So as we wrap up here today, I mean, what advice can you give someone who's looking to build? What would you say to someone who's really trying to find the right room to be in and what they could look for?
I would say this, my leadership philosophy is simple and it applies to so many things in our industry and in life. Choose people over volume all the time. And that goes from leaders to LOs who are looking for the right referral partner avatar. People over volume at all times. Choose processes over chaos. Do not play into that chaotic life, period. It will drain you and your energy and your focus in ways you never understand. And then, belief over fear. If you have to believe that you're working towards a greater good, period, over fearing the unknown of making it. You have to look back, and something that I had to do a lot was think, what would I want my kids to do in this situation? Would I want my son to not, try out for that team because he might not make it? Or do I want my daughter to not pick the prom dress that she liked because she didn't think others would like it, or whatever that is? How would I want my kids to process this decision, and how would I want them to move? And it's fearless. I want them to be fearless. And I also want to show them that I'm fearless.
Yeah. Well, I totally believe that you are. And, I think the success shows that. And I love that you're out there setting a great example for others to follow and really leading from the front. So, Susie, I just want to say thank you for joining the Lowdown and being a part of this community and having this conversation. And, I just wish you nothing but the best in the future.
Same to you. Thank you for having me on. You're an absolute joy.
Thanks.